We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Dungeon Crawlers, where I'm about to lose my voice. That's right, I've talked so much today that I don't have much of a voice left. I'm sitting here thinking, why didn't I grab a drink of water? That's just because we have so much to talk about. That's right, we have decided to go deep. Not deep and dark, not scary, but deep emotionally. I know, it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird to think that we have emotions. You just think that we're just these crazy guys somewhere on a podcast and talking to microphones at some weird, crazy hour of the evening to do something fun for you. And if you missed the Turkey Bowl, shame on you, because it was awesome.
And it was a well-won victory, Dan. High five
Yes,
to you.
yes. Barely won that one, but it was a great battle of awesome and epicness. And remember, if anyone asks you if you're a god, what do you say?
You say yes.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Oh,
Can I get a multiple choice?
yeah. Can I have graham crackers with that? Do I get OJ? Or you say yes?
I'm gonna go with you say yes.
Okay. Good choice.
Oh, good. That means I retroactively win the Turkey Bowl.
Yes, you do. So, with that said, we had kind of an idea. There's some things coming up. We've kind of alluded to it. But because of that, we're kind of going emotionally deep this evening to, talk about Dungeon Crawlers, the show itself, what it means to us, and how we got started, how we became a part of it, and so on and so forth. So, with that said, where shall we begin?
Well, I think the most natural place to begin is the beginning.
The beginning. The beginning is scary.
And the thing is like, we've only got an hour, Dan. Okay, so I know you've been doing this for a while, but let's get the highlights up until the point at which Krebs and I enter the picture. And then I believe Krebs will have entered the picture first, so he'll get to start and talk about his portion of the thing, and then I enter second and I talk about my portion of the thing. And let's weave this beautiful tapestry of how Dungeon Crawlers came to be and why each of those things added some importance to where we are and where we're going.
All right, I will start at the beginning. It was a cold December Friday afternoon, December 30th, 1977. No, just kidding.
I was born a poor child.
It was a Friday. I'm not lying there. It was a Friday. Yes, I was born on a Friday, December 30th. But no, it was definitely well beyond that. Dungeon Crawlers was born because I wanted to get on the radio. Radio has weird rules that you can't get behind the mic unless you have experience. So how do you get experience? So I decided, hey, I'm going to do the podcast. Got together with a friend of mine. We came up with the name because literally, we were in his basement. And there were bars on the window, and we're like, hey, we like D&D. You do dungeon crawls. We're kind of in a dungeon right now because there's bars on the windows. Let's call it Dungeon Crawlers. All right, Dungeon Crawlers Radio. There it is. And we have to have a dragon for our logo. That was the easy part. And then we started formulating a plan. Okay, what do we want to do with this? I can figure out the technology part. That's easy. We came up with a list of our white whales. These were the three people. If we could interview these three people, we knew we made it. Those three people were Bob Salvatore, Tracy Hickman, and George Lucas. I still have not got George Lucas. I don't think I'll ever get George Lucas since he's retired. But yeah, Bob Salvatore and Tracy Hickman were definitely on that list. Tracy was the first person to get. And I will admit, it took me an hour and a half to get up enough courage to ask Tracy to come on to the show to be interviewed. I sat at a Barnes & Noble looking like a complete idiot and fool. And when I got up there and I'm like, hey, I had him sign my book and I said, hey, I also run a podcast. I'd love to have you on. This is what it's called. Gave him my card. He's like, oh yeah, no problem. Here's my email. It's like, I spent an hour and a half and it was that easy. What the crap? And then I realized, yeah, it is that easy to ask for interviews and get people to come on the show.
And what year was this?
So I started the show in December of 2008.
And when did you ask Tracy to come on?
So Tracy to come on the show would have been, I believe it was May or June of 2009.
Okay, so not too far in.
Yeah, so not too far in. Because we realized we wanted to do interviews. That was really fun. My very first interview, the very first interview we did was with Howard Taylor. He's a local comic book artist. He does Schlock Mercenary. We were at Conduit, which doesn't exist anymore, and we were thinking we were pretty cool. Him coming on, and I did all this research and had all these really cool questions. We got there, we set up, they brought him over, and I realized I left all the questions at home, or I lost them. And so we flew by the seat of our pants, and I realized I actually like that format better. But the first thing is, like, we apologized, Matt. We had these questions, we lost them, and he's like, do you even know who I am? And we're like, sort of. He's like, oh, great. They've put me with people that have no clue who I am, and now I have to do an interview. After that interview, we were just shooken like, oh, crap, we never want to do another interview again. No, please no. That was horrible. And then the convention guys brought over, and the reason we were at the convention is the programming guy had heard our podcast and thought we were great, so invited us there. Then they brought over Dan Wells. Dan was awesome. Great interview. Made us feel like $1 million. And he's like, yeah, we do. Me and my friends do a little podcast about writing. I'd love to have you over. We'd love to give you a plug. We're going to be recording later. Drop in. We'll give you a plug. And he's like, I got a buddy of mine. He's going to be making it really big right now. He's doing fairly well, but he just got an amazing deal that's going to just catapult him into the stratosphere. I think you need to interview him. So I'm going to go get him and have him come over. And so he went and got his friend, brought him over, said, hey, I want you to meet my friend, Brandon Sanderson. So, I met Brandon, I met Larry and Dan all before they became household names. Mistborn was out, but he had just barely been told that he had gotten the Wheel of Time series deal, and it hadn't been spoken of, and so it was before it became big. It was kind of cool. And then they ran into a problem with their recording. Their guy had forgot their equipment, and I'm like, hey, we got our equipment. So I ended up recording all their episodes, and they gave us a plug on Writing Excuses. And that's kind of where I realized I love interviewing people. And I could use this podcast to help others, because really when we're interviewing these authors, that's what it is. We're helping get their name out, sell a couple books for them, put a few dollars in their pocket and help them out. And I love that.
But most importantly, we have proven time and time again, if you want a career as an author, you have to come on to Dungeon Crawlers.
It's actually been kind of funny. There are some authors out there that they've seen how their book sales boost after coming on the show. And I'm sure that's with any show, really. But
we are the lucky rabbit's foot.
It is funny because I do have a few that are like, yeah, I get more sales off, when coming onto your show. And I think that's kind of because we're more targeted towards, we've been targeted towards geeks and gamers and readers and stuff like that. But it's been a fun ride. I've enjoyed helping other people, even other hosts that have come on the show. They've come on, they've done their thing, and they've moved on to something else. But it's, in some cases, it's given them the courage to go after things. Jared, that was on the show a while back, he has his own YouTube channel, and he talks about football. Yeah. That's a passion of his. And, I think a lot of what he did on the show here helped to give him the stepping stones to that. Yeah.
So help me to understand, because obviously the interviews have been a big part of this for you. What are some of the moves that happened between that first year and, just continuing onwards from there? How did Dungeon Crawlers begin to evolve at that point? As you've now started to get a little bit of water under your boat, some wind in your sails, ground under your feet.
So, yeah, from there, we got hit up. We got contacted by a local internet radio station. Like, hey, we think your show's awesome. We're a local little internet radio station. We'd love to have you on as part of our programming. So we went from podcasting to actual doing a live radio show online. And then we take those episodes, still push it out as a podcast a week later. But it allowed us to do it live. That really kind of upped the ante of the game for us, because we could play music, which I always thought was fun. It's like, I'm really being a DJ. This is what I wanted. This is cool.
And you played great tracks too.
And
it was lots of fun. We had a lot of fun there.
So, Krebs, were you listening at that point then?
I was semi-involved. I was involved off and on during some of that.
Yeah, and it was shortly after that. So we left there because there were some problems with the station. We left there, and then we continued that live feed. We went through Blog Talk Radio, and we had a good sponsor. Epic Puzzles and Games was our sponsor that time.
I remember Epic Puzzles and Games.
And that's that's when we had this crew of guys that were really into Palladium games come on to talk about Palladium. So that was the first appearance of Krebs on the show. And it was actually, that's when we found out about Gen Con. We went out to, we got all excited about going to Gen Con. We had Tracy on a couple times. And then we got Bob to come on. So, hey, I got 2 of my 3 white whales. It was shortly after that going out, I met Tasha. We had Tasha come on. She actually, because of her CD that she put out, she came on and sang some songs. It was actually kind of fun. And then from there, we realized that we weren't getting the audio quality we wanted out of doing Blog Talk. Because it was live, the audio quality wasn't as good. There was a lot of other issues because we were doing it live from Epic that, we were getting a lot of background noise that I couldn't channel out. And it got to the point where some of our guests couldn't hear us. And they're like, I don't know what's going on behind you, but I just can't hear what you're saying because it's overriding your mics. And so we chose to go back to the podcast format where I could control and filter out a lot of the stuff. And that's where we've kind of remained from that point on.
So let me interrupt you for a minute here.
Sure.
Then, because we've seen kind of this evolution of, wanting to get a little bit of experience to be able to get onto the radio, right? You grew through that area, started to meet people, started to get more involved, get more equipment, get more experience, get to the point where you are actually doing live shows.
Yep.
See the foibles and problems, begin to pull it back to, this podcast format. And from that point, we've, pretty much stayed here. But, and maybe this is really a question for Krebs. How in the world did a bunch of nut jobs who like a know-nothing game like Palladium end up generating enough interest to ultimately join and become part of the show? Like, Krebs, what was it that made you reach out to Dungeon Crawlers, become part of Dungeon Crawlers, or interested in Dungeon Crawlers to begin with? But then what was that journey that got you into Dungeon Crawlers?
I've actually been sitting here trying to remember exactly how Dan and I met, because if I remember correctly, and Dan, you can correct me on this one, but I think what happened was I had organized a major event at the school that I was attending at the time. And it was a major nerd event, and Dungeon Crawlers came and did a show there. In fact, it may have been through a mutual friend of ours. I'll verify the name with you off the air sometime. But I think what happened was you got invited out to the school I was at, the school that we were at, me and this mutual friend, and you and I'm trying to remember his name right now. Your longtime co-host at that time.
Riley, or Malik.
It was Malik. It was Malik. And it was just the two of you. And I remember like watching you do your thing, and having been a film student before, having been a guest voice on radio things myself, I'm always fascinated with media creation. I'm always fascinated with entertaining an audience. And so I wanted to talk to you guys. I wanted to figure out what you were about. And that was my first exposure to DCR. And I was like, this is a nerd culture podcast. I could totally be into this. Because I wasn't really into podcasts. I didn't really care. But nerd culture, that sucked me right in.
Yeah, it was Newmont. I can't remember the guy's name now. But he invited us out to do
I'll drop a first name. I think it may have been Keith.
No.
Okay.
No. Was it
well, let's figure it out. I don't know if it was a student or if it was actually like a faculty member.
No, it was a faculty person. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe it was Sean.
Yeah, so we got invited out. We did a live show from there. We had gifts. We had free stuff we gave out. I know we came back again to build swords because they were going to do like some LARP RPG thing.
Yeah, we still do it to this day. It's now called the Foam Fall Massive. Nice.
I built the sword, but I never got to go into the battle, which really sucked. But so that's how it started. And he just came over and started talking to us. And then he started talking about, hey, I love Palladium. I have this group. We'd really love to come on the show and talk about it. I'm like, sure, let's make it happen. And it happened.
That was back, 2011? No. It was before that. It was 2009. Because I think I was still a student at the time, and I graduated 2010.
I think it was short. Yeah, it may have been late 2009, early.
May have been 2010, but anyway. So
it's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, I talked to them about RPGs in general. Of course, we got on the topic of D&D. I think we even touched on Pathfinder a little.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, I've played D&D, but my favorite system is Palladium. And then we started, and then if Dan said, it was either Dan, I think it was Dan actually who spoke up, and he was like, oh, that's the Rifts one, right? And I was like, yeah. And we talked about it for a little while. And it ends up that me and my crew, we'd been playing Dead Rain, the zombie apocalypse game in that system. So we came on the show to talk about it. I still have that recording somewhere. I listen to it every once in a minute. And we went on ad nauseum about that, but it struck up a real friendship between Dan and I.
Yeah.
I would come back on the show as a guest host. And that's when the second time I was on the show is when I met Jared Seach.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about his Star Wars fan films.
Yep.
And again, me being a film person and having done media creation before, of course, I got sucked into that. Jared and his now wife, Jessica, and I became friends through the show. We ended up, years later, we would end up making an award-winning short film together. It would win the competition that we made it for, but it would also win 2 awards at the very, very first Salt Lake, what was then the Salt Lake Comic-Con, and now it's called FanX.
Yeah.
And over the years, off and on, I would reach out to Dan. I would say hi. We'd talk about something nerdy, and I would end up on the show. And
we even did a birthday fly through.
Yeah, like just a handful of years ago, we went to the Christa McAuliffe Space Center, and we did a Star Trek-like space simulation with a rather large crew of our friends and family. And it was a fantastic experience. We've mentioned it on the show before. And because our birthdays are so close together, we just had a unified birthday party as grown men. And it was great. And it was wonderful. And now I'm at a point in my life. I got to a point in my life where I could support, I could be part of, I should say. I could be part of the show on a regular basis. And Dan I've always considered this show Dan's kingdom. This is his world, his show. The all of us are guests in this world, and so I consider myself exceptionally fortunate to be considered a co-host now on the regular on the show. In fact, now it's been a year. It's been a year since I returned to the show as a regular co-host as opposed to a guest host, and so here we are. That's the history in a rather large nutshell.
So
Well,
what
the
do
funny
you-
thing is there's been a lot of people that have become hosts of the show that came on as a guest. You know, Jared and Jessica came on as a guest to talk about their Star Wars fan film that won an award. We had them come on. That's back when we were on the online radio station, and we had them come on, and then later they became a part of the show. We've had other guests or other people that came in as guests that ended up being hosts for a short period of time. Other than the first guys that I started out with, everyone else has kind of been, hey, they've been a guest, they're pretty good, and then they've just gradually, with the exception, no, even Scott was, because he came on with the Ghostbusters of Salt Lake. So, yeah, I mean, pretty much everyone since the original cast has been people that have come on the show, have enjoyed the show, have been friends of mine, have stayed friends that have slowly, like, I'm like, hey, I'm looking for some co-hosts. Are you interested? And then they end up being a part of the show for a while.
Which actually brings us to Alton.
Well, but even
Yeah.
before we get there, I think it's really important to note that like every host that's come onto the show has brought unique perspective and flavor,
Yes.
and
This is
you know,
true.
even though the core of the show has still, for the most part, stayed very solid, the way that it's expressed itself, that Dungeon Crawlers has evolved, has been very much shaped by the people that have entered and exited.
Well,
You know.
definitely. They definitely have. Very early on, it was very book and game heavy. I mean, we talked about games quite a bit. We had authors on quite a bit. And that's because that was kind of our forte. Joe Flagoon and Malik, when they were on the show, that was our bread and butter. We did touch out to other things. We had some really cool interviews with, TV and movie stars. But that really wasn't our expertise. I didn't have a lot of connections there, but I quickly gained a lot of connections with publishers and game designers.
Mm-hmm.
As they left, Jared and Jessica came in, and they weren't as heavy on the games. They definitely weren't gamers. And so the focus changed a little bit. It became more of a pop culture type show. We definitely focused on we got a timeout signal.
I didn't mean to interrupt your sentence, but you have a mouse in your hand, I think, and I can hear the plastic.
I don't have a mouse. I have a transformer in my hand.
Oh, I hear a transformer in your hand, and I can hear the plastic. Sorry.
So now
Okay.
the real question is, do we leave this in for everybody to get a laugh at?
Well,
because
it actually might be
it's
funny.
so perfect that Dan is sitting there playing with a transformer while we're talking about recording a geek show.
I
It
think
is
I'm
so
going to
Dan.
leave it in. I think I'm leaving it
Okay.
in.
Sorry
Just
about
because,
that.
Yeah, like, that's just how I
But-
am.
But that's really the
human.
thing, though, right? Is that
Yeah.
like, even though we've changed voices and we've changed topics a lot, it's everybody has that passion, that love
Yeah.
for all of these things geek,
Yes.
and that's really, really a cool thing to have.
Yes. Since I've been a kid, I have had Transformers in my life. I just love there's just something cathartic about transforming from vehicle mode to robot mode and back. I in some of them I can do it without even looking at them, which is what I was doing then.
Wait.
it's like
Which
my-
transformer was it?
It's Soundwave. But
Oh.
it's a car version of Soundwave. But that's my Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, I'm sorry. So let's get this train back on the rails.
No, it's fine. It's fine. But no, every as I put it, cast,
Mhm.
or version of Dungeon Crawlers had a different flavor. We went to that pop culture version because that's what they knew a lot about. We talked a lot about Star Wars. We talked a lot about TV shows. So that worked really well because that's what they knew. And, when we tried to talk about games, they pulled back, and I realized that. So I wanted to make it comfortable for them and make the topics so that we could talk about it. Because, if I can't eat, for me, I don't want to sit and talk about a subject and it just be me. There are some DJs out there that they're great at that. And it's really holding a one-sided conversation, and imagining someone talking back. And that's a great talent and a great skill to have. But I enjoy talking and conversing with people and getting a response back that I can play off of, that I can build off of. So I've always liked having a group of hosts. So if I can't get them to respond, then I'm kind of back into that place. So I would change. I would adjust things in the show so that I could get that response back. As they, Jessica got pregnant, she moved on. We brought in a new cast, and that's where Scott and Baron and Mackenzie came into play. We got a little bit of gaming in there, but that, again, still wasn't their forte, their wheelhouse. And now we're back. We're kind of back to that. We're and this kind of brings up the point where we're bringing in the focus. So we're kind of back to my originals: gaming, writing, and TV. Those were the kind of the basics we started off with, which is fantastic that we're kind of looping back there. I feel like we've come full circle.
So help then the natural evolution to that question becomes, and this may be job review time, so I apologize in advance, but what do you feel that Krebs brings to the show that you don't think you could get another way, or that you absolutely love every week?
Well, that's the thing, is I think every host has brought something I've enjoyed and loved. Every every time we end the show, there is such enthusiasm and excitement even at the end, as much as there is at the beginning with Krebs. His sign off is just it's that great. But the thing is we can have a mindless conversation, but it's for us, we're just wandering all over the place. But when you go back and listen to it, it's like, holy crap! It sounds like it was planned, and it was just amazing. I'll say Christmas wreath because it's that time of year. When you look at a Christmas wreath, when you pick one up, it's bland. It's just green branches that are woven together. But when you add the holly, when you add the ornaments and everything, and you look at it at the end, it's like this amazing thing that you put on the door. And that's what it looks like after we've had that conversation, and I go back and listen to it while I'm editing. It's like, wow, it's just this spectacular thing. But as we were talking about it, we're just like we're throwing this here and this here and that there.
Speaking of bland conversations, I think that takes us to the year 2016.
Oh. Yes, 2016.
I remember when 2016 was the worst year ever before 2020.
And this is were there years before 2020? That is an excellent question.
2020 has been 67 years long.
If that's the case, I am really old.
But yes, take us back to 2016, Elton.
Yeah. So this was the point at which I started to enter the scene for Dungeon Crawlers. Now, technically, I did start to become aware of and listen to Dungeon Crawlers before that point, on and off. I had a close friend with whom I'd been contemplating starting a game store. It did ultimately end up happening. But as we were shopping around and really trying to make sure that we had a solid footing to get everything started, we ended up traveling to a number of different game stores, and Dungeon Crawlers kept coming up. Up to and including at Gamers Inn there in Lehigh, their old location, all 1,100 square feet of it, including a utility closet and bathroom. So it was but big old banner on the wall, and they say, oh yeah, the guys come in and record every week, and blah, blah, blah. And so started to poke around a little bit and found out more. And I'd been engaged and then very recently married to Tasha, my wife, at the point at which we were starting game stores. And she mentioned, oh, yeah, I know Dungeon Crawlers. Dan Swenson, good friend, and blah, blah. So started to become a little more acquainted, started running into many of the same circles, and ended up in an opportunity where we needed to do some promotion for Paragon City Games in Draper. And we had built out this back room, and I knew that there wasn't a lot of space down in Lehigh. And so I reached out to Dan and said, hey, why don't you come on in and we'll do some promotion for the store. And if you like the room, then, we'll work something out. Now, needless to say, 4.5 years into the future, that didn't end up lasting forever. But, Dan came on, and the first episode of Eternal Shame was recorded, in which I didn't realize that we were doing an episode to promote the store until we got done. And both Dan and Tracy and Scott were all gently serving up these nice little softball questions to me. And I thought that we were focusing on interviewing Tracy first, and then we were going to do a different episode promoting Paragon City. And so I kept doing these nice, curt little soundbitey responses and passing the mic back. And we got to the tail end, and everybody was kind of nonplussed, and I could not figure it out until a week or two later, when I don't even remember whether it came up in conversation or whether I was just listening to the episode, and it all just kind of hit me. And it was rather embarrassing. As someone who, as many of the listeners out there have come to know, is extremely verbose, I have no problem saying sentences longer than 10 words into the mic.
Truth.
I was absolutely mortified that I had blown my chance. But very graciously, Dan offered a follow-up episode, came back, and we recorded, and we talked a little bit more about where we were going and what we were planning. And it was a beautiful start to an on-again, off-again relationship with Dungeon Crawlers. I definitely was not part of all of the episodes or anything like that, but there were a few really cool ones with Dan Wells from FanX, and a couple of others that, I popped in occasionally to be able to help with and do different things. And we sponsored a few different events at the store with Dan Swenson here and a couple of others. But it eventually hit a point where I had to walk away from that first project. It was messy and painful. And then, so that's 2018, basically. And 2019 rolls around, and I come home one evening, and my wife is sitting there waiting for me. And as we're eating dinner, she says, so I was talking to Dan. Oh, yeah, how's Dan doing? Well, I really think that you should join the show. I'm like, well, isn't that Dan's call? She says, well, I was already kind of talking to him about it. I think you should go do it. So, I get on, and I'm talking with Dan and Krebs. And now's the part where I get to deflect a little bit of shame over to Krebs. Krebs realizes that he had agreed to come run a number of different events for me and never did.
One different event. But yes, it was an event. In fact, so you and I met in 2016. And to my shame, I did not realize it was you that I had met in 2016 when you and I interfaced for this show in 2019.
I am very forgettable, Krebs. Yes.
I think I just forget things. But what's funny is that I kind of came around. I was like, when I found out that you were involved with Paragon, first of all, I kind of knew that there was a history there, and I didn't necessarily want to dredge it up. But then as I got more comfortable, as you and I became more of friends, I was like, well, I remember that I offered to bring Zombicide to Paragon and do like a Zombicide event. It's something that I do at my school. I do it once or twice a year, so I'm practiced at it. We could totally do this, and it was a great idea. You're like, yeah, let's do that, And I was like, cool, I'll be in touch. And we were in touch one time to set up a date. That date fell through for some reason. We never talked again. In fact, in our Facebook Messenger history, It was dated. And I was like, oh, we've actually known each other for 4 years, but there was like 3 years, 11 months, and 3 weeks where we just didn't care. And so, and now we're co-hosts on the same show. And yeah, early on I was like, so I remember promising to do Zombicide, and I never did that, so...
I'll still have you know, Krebs, I've only played Zombicide once.
Yeah.
We should fix that!
It's
Well,
true.
and I met Alton at I can't remember if it was Gen Con or if it was Fan X. But I know you were at Tracy's booth. You know, and that's when Tasha's like, "Oh yeah, this is my boyfriend Alton," and I'm like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And then we started talking about stuff, and yeah. So,
yeah. I mean, doing all the cons and stuff was great, and that's something that I know, you know, as soon as everything permits, we're going to be getting back to. But, but yeah, it's really that love of like you were saying earlier, being able to ask questions and explore things and be unabashedly in love with hobbies and geekdom and story. And, you know, that's one of the things that really makes Dungeon Crawler so special to me, is that I can show up and just, instead of having to be the guy who knows everything all the time, we can just have conversations about the things that we love, you know, and be unabashedly in love with that, whether that's just raw geekdom or whether it's the love of storytelling or of games or whatever, you know. And through all of it, it's that connection between people and what we're sharing and what we're loving, you know.
well, I mean, and that's the one thing that I've enjoyed about the podcast is pretty much every host that I've had, it's never been a competition to one up at someone else. What it's been is we've just shared what we've been passionate about. We've shared what we love. We talk about it, and it's never like, wow, I'm the smartest person in the room. It's, wow, here's someone else that loves this just as much as I do. Or, hey, this person doesn't agree with me, but that's okay. We're still having a healthy conversation here. Where you don't get that a lot anymore. I mean, just look at social media. You try to have a conversation on there, and you make a post, and suddenly you're getting 3, 4, 5 different people just mad at you for your opinion. And so that's something I've always enjoyed, that even when someone has disagreed, it hasn't been, you know, when we've had guests on, when I've had hosts, it's always been a healthy conversation. And it's okay that, you know, our listeners get to hear that. Okay, I'm going to side with this guy. I agree with him. No, I'm going to agree with this guy. It's okay, because that's what it's all about. You know, we don't all have to agree on the same thing. If we did, then, man, movies would be boring. Yeah. We'd only have one type of movie made.
Yeah,
I mean, that was the whole reason that I proposed Rad Dome to begin with, was because I felt like this is a group of guys that we're going to get in, and it's not going to be about, you know, my franchise is better than yours. We can just get in and have fun with it and be completely, you know, subjective. And in our tail end, we're still going to give each other points for the things that we completely agree are awesome about what's in the middle. It's just a beautiful thing to be able to do that with friends.
And Rad Dome really plays off of something that we used to do. We used to do the Epic Showdown. And the Epic Showdown was really awesome. You know, one host would be the judge, or would be kind of the ring announcer. One host would be one person, and another host would be another person, and then we would debate who would win. I mean, one of my all-time favorite episodes of the Epic Showdown is when we had Boba Fett up against Lionel from Thundercats. Oh and author Dan Wells defended Lionel. And we had the showdown and everything. And it literally came down. And back then we had a lot of interaction because it was a live show, so we could have interaction from our listeners, which I miss. But it was so great.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
I know. It was so great because Dan Wells said something so profound that suddenly Boba Fett, which, you know, everyone, if you go around, a lot of people love Boba Fett, but he said something so profound that suddenly the votes shifted dramatically. And it was this very simple. It was very simply this. You look at Return of the Jedi, Boba Fett went up against a blind man, and he lost. What happens when Lionel looks into the Sword of Omens and gets into sight beyond sight? He's pretty much blind. So I think Lionel would win in a fight with Boba Fett. And suddenly, all the votes that were pouring in for Boba Fett shifted to Lionel, and Lionel won by a landslide.
Oh my gosh.
It was like, I can't remember the number, but it was more than 30 votes that he won by. All because of that. And I'm like, this is why I love this game show. Doing the Rad Dome, it's the same way. Yes, it's Krebs and I doing it, but we're pretty much just throwing it out there. How we think they would win. The very first game we did, I won. The second game we did, I didn't win again. He won, but I was just as excited that he won, even though I lost. And then, we did the Turkey Bowl. I was pretty sure I was going down in a ball of flames there.
I thought I had you.
And Krebs thought he had me. And then I won by the smallest of margin.
7 points, less than 10%.
Yeah. But it was fun. It was totally fun. And
it really
I like
was
doing those type of things because it's improv. We're just winging it. And we're not doing it to show off our nerdiness or our brain. We're just doing it to have fun. And it just happens to end up being a really fun show at the end. At the end of the day, none of us are angry that we lost. We don't care who won, really. We just loved doing it.
Okay, let's talk about the tail end of the story so far. The elephant in the room. 2020 has been a heck of a year.
Yes,
challenge.
Some of us have emotionally taken more lumps than others.
Yes, and we absolutely feel for all of you out there who have not been able to hear as many interviews as we would like, who have not been able to interact with us at conventions and in other places. And as the show has been going through its evolution this year with, Krebs and Dan and I, as well as just reacting to the way that the world is growing, we see some opportunity. Yep. There are a lot of things that we've missed this year, and we're figuring out new ways to be able to really tap into the core of what we love about this show, about this community, about all of these things that have brought us to this point. And we think that there's some pretty cool stuff that we're going to be bringing out in 2020.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's this year has been a rough year, coming into 2020, I just had to move. My marriage was starting to get really rocky. So there was a good period of time we weren't doing a lot of episodes. I was just trying to keep my head above water. Scott was in a transition as well. We brought Krebs on. We tried to do as many episodes as we could. Things were getting worse, in my relationship. But I came to realize, because I went back to therapy, I came to realize that doing the show was cathartic for me. Doing the show was self-care. It's when I could openly just talk about whatever, and it didn't matter. I wasn't going to get in trouble, even if I said something stupid. I wasn't walking on eggshell. It was an hour of time, or maybe a little bit more than hours of time, that I could just be myself and not worry about things. And, I really fought for that, to keep that, even though my relationship with my ex was saying, no, I want you done. I want you done with that. She was even pushing me to stop writing, which I did. I did for a whole year. I quit writing for a whole year, which I realized was the stupidest mistake in the world, because I love writing. It's a passion of mine. So, yeah. My marriage has come to an end. It's been rough. That's been something I've been coming through. So this year, that's not even including the quarantine stuff we've been dealing with. It's not including the craziness of you can't find toilet paper on the shelf. It's not the fact we can't even go to a movie theater. I went to a movie last night for the first time in over a year.
What'd you see?
I went and saw Love and Monsters. Holy crap.
I love that movie.
Hilarious. It was a great movie. I not what I expected, but totally, I love it. I want to buy it. Of course, most movies I go see that I like, I end up buying. But it was a fantastic movie. And I'm sitting in the movie theater, and there are literally only 9 other people in this theater with me.
Wow, it's full.
And I'm just thinking, this is definitely not the normal theater experience I'm used to. But wow, I actually love the fact I'm in a theater again. I'm watching a movie on the big screen. I love my 65-inch television screen, but it's just not the same. So I hope 2021 changes things. Hope things turn around. We can kind of get back to some sort of normality. But at the same time, it's brought some attention of like, I miss the interaction we used to have with our listeners. I mean, there's still one listener that's constantly sending us new stuff. And I think it's fantastic. I wish I could stay on top of that.
Let me plug that just really fast.
His last name is Bird.
Yeah, we really appreciate that you participate the way that you do. I know that we don't always respond in a timely fashion because of our various 9-to-5s and life things, but we appreciate you, and you are part of our community, and we all high-five you for your efforts.
I mean, I want to pull it up because I want to give a shout-out to him because I appreciate, man. He's just constantly, it's like, oh, this is cool. You guys should take a look into this. Oh, this is cool, too. Oh, man, why? I hate this new app thing. They changed the app.
Should I race you?
I know the last name is Bird.
I think you're right about that. I'm going to find out right now.
I'm not even on the Dungeon Crawler one. That's why I can't find him. Brett Bird.
No editing. Leave this in. Brett Bird.
I'm leaving it all in. Brett Bird. I have appreciated that. And that's what... And yeah, I feel bad that I haven't been on top of it as much as I normally have. Like I said, this year's been rough, but I want that back. That community we had, the interaction we had where people were, we had the Gamer Forge way, way back, and people would email in, hey, this is the problem I'm having with this game. What's your advice? And we'd give advice. The Epic Showdown, where we have this going on live, and we had people pinging us with their votes. They'd be emailing in with their votes for who they thought should win. I love that community. I love that interaction we had. We had a lot more interaction on social media, but I think social media has so many algorithms and limits to it now that you can't get that like you used to. So, while talking with you guys, you've come up with a solution for that.
And the good news is that we've got some really cool things that are coming to help re-enable some of that, even though we aren't going to be able to see you in person all the time or as quickly yet. We do have some things that are coming. One of the things that, if it's okay that I say it, maybe this will be about to be bleeped out, but we're going to be adding a Discord server here.
In fact, by the time that you listen to this episode, we will have the link up on the website.
Tail end of this video and down in the description. Exactly. So make sure to be listening for that. But we're going to be doing a lot of cool things on there, including in some instances, we'd like to be able to be recording the show with Discord up so that the people who want to be there can be there. And when we're able to do cool episodes where we're able to interact with people directly and do polls and things like that, that can happen. Similarly, we're going to be reaching out a lot more for prompts for episodes or being able to choose rosters for Rad Dome, or if we can bring back Epic Showdown, if we can bring back a lot of these other things that we've come to love over the years and really yearn for. Because at the end of the day, when we look at Dungeon Crawlers, it's about that connection.
Yeah.
It's about this shared love that we have as hosts, as a community, with you as listeners, and we're really excited for what's coming next.
Well, what's really interesting is if you look at, and this is kind of I'm skewing off to the side here, but if you look at most mental health things, depression, addiction, anything like that, what is the cure for it? This is something I've learned. over the last year, the cure, or I shouldn't say the cure, the counter to those things is connection, connecting with another human being. If you go out, if you're feeling depressed and you go have a meaningful conversation with someone, that feeling of depression leaves. If you're feeling antsy, for those people that struggle with alcoholism and, you're feeling antsy and you feel like you need to go drink, if you go talk to someone, those feelings go away. It's really interesting that as human beings, we need that connection. We need to connect with another human being and have that that back and forth conversation. And I think we deliver that. For years, I've always pitched the show when people are like, well, what's your show like? I'm like, easiest way for me to explain what the show is like is the conversation that happens at the game table before the game starts. It's the easiest way. And everyone's like, oh, I get it. Because we've all had that. We've all had that conversation while we're setting up the board game, or we're getting ready to play Dungeons and Dragons or Palladium or whatever, where we're just sitting and having fun, talking about the things we love.
Pulling out the nachos for movie night or standing in line waiting to sign the book.
Exactly.
That's right.
We have those conversations, and that's exactly what it is. That's how the show has always ran, and I've always liked that format. And there are other people that definitely do a much tighter format where they have planned questions where they are, but I really feel like we get more from people we interview when they're relaxed, when there have been many times where I've had guests on where they just go on these weird tangents, but by the time that tangent is over, man, there's some amazing gifts that come out of those things. Some insight that we probably wouldn't have got had we had the structure. So, yeah. Anyways, I know we're running out of time, but there are definitely some things to come. I want to see, and I would love to see more interaction from our guests. I definitely want to be able to throw it out there where if we have an author coming on and it's your favorite author, throw out some questions. I would really love to know this question. I'd really love to know that. And we're going to let you know. I mean, we're going to say, hey, we're going to go to our listeners' questions. Here's one of our listeners, Todd Smith from Akron, Ohio. This is the question that he sent in for you, and then we read it off so that Todd Smith, when he's listening to that episode, it's like, whoa, I was a part of the episode. It wasn't just us asking the question on his behalf. We're going to say who it came from so that he knows. Because I think that's cool. I mean, there's an old radio show that I used to listen to way back when, and it was during my teenage years, where they would do something similar to that. And it was always cool, or even when they had, get prize things and they called in and, what's your name? Why'd you call in? What are you going on? You felt like you were part of the show. And I want our listeners to feel like that.
The point of all this is if you haven't heard the thread underneath everything, this show means something to us. We love this show, and we love that you love this show. This show has always been about the nerd kingdom, the geekdom as a whole. It's been about all of us, not just the three of us. We are going to be providing multiple opportunities, increased channels of communication where we can ask you what you want to know, what you want to say. We want to give you an opportunity to have your voice in this show with us, because this is about all of us.
Yeah, and we're really excited for what's coming next. So if you haven't had the opportunity already, make sure to take a look down in the description below. We have some links out to a Discord server. If you've never used Discord before, I assure you it is a very simple thing. Basically, all it is a localized forum for everybody to get together. You can just type in and be able to interact with people over text if that's the easiest way to do it. We're also going to have some voice channels, and hopefully you'll be able to catch us live a couple of times, be able to interact with us directly. But make sure to take a look there. One of the things that I dropped earlier is that I've become part of a new game store. And as part of that, we're going to be doing a really cool drawing with the first 100 people who enter the server. And that may be something that takes an hour to fill up. It may be something that takes a couple of weeks to fill up because, this is a new format. This is a new thing that we're trying. But if you are one of the first 100 people onto the server, we're going to enter you into a drawing for one of 10 gift cards out to Mythos Games, which, I'm a little biased. I can endorse my own product, but we wanted to do something cool to be able to give back to everybody else as well.
Absolutely. And for the record, it's not just...
Even if you're not interested in that, at least hop on to come have a conversation.
And it's not just Alton that supports that store. I want you to know that ever since Alton opened Mythos, I have spent more time and money at that game store in the last 3 months than I have at any game store in the last 3 years. And that is not an exaggeration. That's empirical data.
And just to appease the FCC gods out there, the show is not officially sponsored by Mythos Games or anything like that. This is something that's coming from us to you as hosts of the show. Though we do hope that there will be some cool opportunities and sponsorships coming in the new year, as well as new interviews and opportunities to go and meet exciting and interesting people and projects and be able to expand maybe even beyond the realm of voice to be able to show some cool things to you. So again, just take a minute, check it out. It's not hard, and it really is going to be a fun place to be able to interact with us and to be able to interact with other people like you.
Yep. So we got to wrap it up because we're out of time. So I'm just going to do what I normally do. So with that said, we'll catch you next time.
Dungeon Crawlers, tell your story, whatever may come.
Thank you, each and every one of you, for being part of this show. Because for us, you are always epic, and you never suck.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.